welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I have the power!
I'm Gary.
And I'm Justine.
And today we're going to review and discuss Excalibur, which came out in 1981 from writer, producer John Boorman. John Boorman, who has had some interesting success with films like Zardoz from 1974, Deliverance from 1972, which pretty much put him on the map as a director to watch out for, until he went ahead and made The Exorcist 2, which was, by and large, one of the biggest disasters in the horror genre. But then he redeemed himself with Excalibur. That was until after a Lord of the Rings project that he was working on was cancelled. And so he went straight ahead into one of his favourite myths of all time, that of King Arthur. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis for Excalibur?
Well, the story is based in legend. We follow Merlin, who has dealings with Uther Pendragon, played by Gabriel Byrne. Uther has been gifted the sword Excalibur and has set out to reclaim the land under his name. And along the way, he has his way with a queen, and she gives birth to Arthur, who Merlin subsequently kidnaps. Arthur is then raised, finds the sword Excalibur, and sets out to reclaim the land as his kingdom.
Nobody shall wield Excalibur but me!
I was, introduced to this film at a very young age, and it's kind of stuck with me because there's very few other films within this genre which has the adult themes and adult material presented within it. So much so that this film has two versions. The R-rated cut is about 2 hours and 20 minutes long, although a PG version was made for television, omitting all of the blood, gore, and intense sexual moments in the film.
Yeah, I actually got grounded for 2 weeks when I watched this because I had gone to my cousin's. It was when you rented your VHSs from the video rental shop, and we had a choice between the original Nightmare on Elm Street and Excalibur. And I rang Mum and said, "Can I watch Nightmare on Elm Street?" She said, "Absolutely not." So I watched Excalibur. When I told her what I had done, it was the R-rated version. I was 12. Let's just say that I had an education that my parents didn't quite feel I was ready for at that time. Yeah.
It is the scene that we're talking about, I'm going to guess, is the Uther scene where he begs Merlin to transform him so he can ride into the Duke of Cornwall's castle and, have his way with his wife. And we're told, in the first 15 minutes of the film that Cornwall and, the southern regions have made an alliance, and Merlin and Uther have spent all this time building this alliance only for it to be destroyed for this one moment of lust.
I must have her and risk everything you've won.
But this is it. I mean, the film starts, it's just like, welcome to the Dark Ages, and they give you the brief synopsis of the legend that will be born and Merlin going around doing all of his magical stuff. We have that really cool kind of creepy battle sequence in the woods between the Duke of Cornwall's men and Uther Pendragon. And then Merlin gets the sword from the Lady of the Lake, and you're like, right, okay, yeah, the legend's going to start now. We've got Excalibur. The film's called Excalibur. The titles are big and shiny about this sword.
Well, originally they were going to call it Merlin, but they couldn't secure the rights to it.
Who owns the rights to Merlin? Apart from Merlin himself. But, I mean, we follow Gabriel Byrne. He manages to bring peace and this alliance, between him and the Duke of Cornwall. And they go to the Duke's castle. And the Duke pretty much goads him. He's just like, you may be king, you may have the sword of power, but you see my queen, you'll never have anybody
it's that dance, isn't it? It's on par. It's a dusk till dawn dance.
Oh, yeah, those men are there with their daggers like, fucking bring it. She's having her way.
They are, and I thought this is what it meant to be a grown-up.
but then Pendragon just completely throws her out the window for like a night with her. And makes the deal with...
But that's one of the main themes, I think, of the legend of most, fables that are passed down through time, and it's temptation, and it's lust for power. It's those sinful things that with the best
completely
plans
destroys
in the
all
world.
the best well
Yeah.
laid plans. But Merlin has that vision of, oh, hold on a minute, I'm looking at the Queen, and I've got this foresight that whatever child she brings will be the new king, will bring peace to the land. He's pretty much Luke Skywalker, and he takes him up onto that hillside and brings forth the power of the dragon. And they put mist all over the land, and the Duke of Cornwall rides out to destroy Pendragon's, soldiers.
It's just the imagery, just looking at it,
is.
watching him leap off the cliff into what
Oh,
would
my
be
God,
certain
is it?
death.
Absolutely.
Your lust will keep you up, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm sure it will.
But it was symbolic, wasn't it? It's not just his lust.
Yeah.
It is symbolic of all kinds of power.
Yeah. He's going for a hard
within the
ride.
confines of a moral code.
Yeah, and he gets into the castle, and you see Morgana Le Fay, Duke of Cornwall's daughter, and she can see past this, what they call it, the charm of making, this magical spell that Merlin has put on Uther Pendragon, and she sees through it because she's already had a vision of her father dying. Now, yeah, this sequence was practically porn in my eyes, because
What?
you mix the sexual tension that you can see on screen, between Pendragon and the Queen, and he rips open her top, and you get a bit of a boob, and he gives her a kiss, and then they start having it on the bed, but you keep cutting back to Cornwall's death sequence.
But that's what makes it so effective, isn't it? It's that cross-cutting, and it hadn't been done terribly, certainly not mainstream.
Yeah.
In order to make that direct link between the lust of violence and the lust of sex.
I just think it's funny as well that Gabriel Byrne has said that for most of the scenes where he was filming the sex scene, they filmed them separately.
Right.
And so that most of the time Gabriel Byrne was humping a pin cushion for over an hour.
That's dedication to
That's
his
how
craft.
they recorded it.
But he'd already made that deal with Merlin as well. Merlin had said, right, whatever comes out from the fruit of your loins, I claim. And Pendragon's like, yeah, right, whatever. I just want to have sex with her, I don't care about what happens after. And then, we don't get told this, but it kind of skips 9 months ahead where she gives birth. And Pendragon comes in and he sees his son. And he says like he's happy now because he's got an heir and they can ride into battle with each other, and his life is going to change because all he's known is violence. And then Merlin turns up and Merlin's like, the baby's mine.
It's not for you, Uther, hearth and home, wife and child.
Nicole Williamson playing Merlin.
I've got to say before you say it, he is amazing. A Shakespearean stage performer. And believe it or not, the studio actually said to John Boorman, you can cast anyone you like as Merlin, except him.
Wow.
But John Boorman was like, no, fuck you. He is going to be playing Merlin. And as far as I'm concerned, he is the best actor in the film. And is just such a memorable performance of Merlin. Just helped shape all future wizards and magicians in film. And I compare them to Merlin.
Don't know about that.
But he was called the Hamlet of his day, and I think that a lot of the dialogue in Excalibur has that Shakespearean overtone. He gives it a gravity.
Yeah.
And sometimes, because he wasn't the only Shakespearean actor, Helen Mirren
was
Shakespearean
Patrick
actress
Stewart.
at the time, Patrick Stewart. It did, however, the downside to that is it made some of the acting, you could tell it was for stage. I think it does give it this theatrical.
Yeah,
I agree,
what I was going to say. It's not like he's hamming it up. He elevates his character, which really helps keep the scenes together. But then I'm looking at it and I'm like, when he goes up against people who I know are fabulous actors, like Gabriel Byrne, Gabriel Byrne delivers this really, hot, demanding performance as Uther Pendragon. He has got this temper behind him, and you can tell it. Then Merlin comes in with all of his big words and his fancy swagger, and you're just like, is he hamming it up a bit? Is he? Comparing Merlin's performance then to some of the later performances, like young Arthur, he does excel.
Looking at the cake's like looking at the future. Until you've tasted it, what do you really know?
And then, of course, it's too late.
Too late.
I think as well that we have to remember that there was only Morgana and Merlin who were representing the whole of the pagan,
Yeah.
aspect of England at that time, and watching that die out. And so his mystical presence had to be bigger in order to compensate for the fact that he was working within this chivalric code, within a Christian moral structure.
It sets him apart from everybody else. Everybody else is kind of living in these dark ages, this medieval time, and yet he does, I will agree, he does come across like he has seen a lot. He's been around for a very long time, and he's very experienced. But then he takes the baby from Pendragon, and I felt slightly uncomfortable with this sequence, but it was because of the acting that I felt uncomfortable with the wife, with the queen screaming, bring me back my son, don't let him take the son, and Pendragon letting
Whereas
him
what
walk
I
out.
noticed with that,
Yeah.
I start to feel uncomfortable, but then I clicked into that acting role again, that theatre acting, because she didn't move. If that was me, I would be arms flailing, nails flying.
She had just given birth, though. That's what I kind of... She had just given birth, so her legs were probably a bit weak.
I took my son to school the day after I gave birth.
Yeah, but this wasn't the day after. This was like the same day.
But, she didn't...
No, she didn't stop it. She wanted Pendragon to chase after him. And he does. Pendragon chases after them into the forest completely alone. I mean, he gets attacked by the Duke of Cornwall's knights.
I think he's attacked by his own men as well. I think for the betrayal of him leaving his camp and leaving them to be destroyed by the Duke's men 9 months earlier.
Yes, that is true.
And people also saw him as not a stable king.
Yeah.
Who was, prone to acts of lust and violence.
Yeah.
And the people just, they didn't want him anymore.
Very quick to betray his
supposed
friends.
Purpose, didn't he?
He did serve his purpose.
His purpose in, this fateful story.
Yeah, he has his big moment.
Arthur.
That's it.
Yeah, and he puts the sword in the stone and declares that no one shall be king but him, unless they can pull the sword free.
Yeah. At this point, you should probably go off and watch the Disney movie, because that will tell you all the stuff about Arthur. Because now we skip to the future, where Arthur is turning up with his half-brother Kay. I can't remember what the father is called. But the three of them have turned up at the very place where the sword is in the stone, and you get a group of knights fighting it out to see who gets the chance to pull the sword free from the stone. And you got the awesome Patrick Stewart, riding around on a horse, just beating the shit out of anybody who comes close. I was starting to get really impressed at this point by the attention to detail by the men in armour. I mean, I can't tell if they were actually wearing armour or if it was like plexiglass or whatever, stunt armour. But I really got the impression that even though that they are encased in this armour and kind of protected, you see men swinging their swords and maces and stuff, banging off the armour. But then when they fall and they land on the floor, it must be so difficult for them to get up because it's so heavy. But Patrick Stewart, he's just like, yep, I've won. I'm going to go pull the sword from the stone. And you kind of know it's not going to happen. But I was still disappointed when he didn't.
Yeah.
He's there and he's pulling, and everybody just turned and went, nah.
And to see him so early in his career establishing this anchoring presence, voice of reason, it's really
Did
wonderful.
Patrick Stewart ever have hair?
Did he?
I think he went bald at 17.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen him with hair. Now, okay, right, I'm probably going to get shit for this, but Arthur, at the young age, oh my god, what was with his voice?
Your sword was stolen, Kay. But here's Excalibur.
He has drawn the sword!
Well, he's got that southern accent, which is really befitting of the character.
Yeah.
No, he would not be cast now.
No, he would not. It just came across. It's like when the guy comes up to him and says, "Where's Kay's sword?" And he's like, "It's I've left it in the tent, Father.
I've left it in the tent, Father.
Yeah, I've left it over there by the cider. I've got to go get it now. I'll be going in a minute. And he wanders off and he follows that child. There's a child carrying a sword. Now, I imagined that was a vision. It was a lure. It wasn't actually a child.
Someone was stealing the sword.
I thought that too, but it just seemed too coincidental that the person stole the sword. Arthur is the only one who sees it, and they kind of take him to the very location where Excalibur is. And Arthur's there like, oh, it's the sword and the stone. Ah, nobody will mind. And he just takes it out. And you're like, he's pulled it from the stone. And people are like, we don't believe you. Put it back. So he puts it back. And somebody else comes along to try and pull it, and he can't pull it out. And they're like, let the boy try. So the boy goes, hey, see, I've got it. I've got the sword. And you're like, well, it's kind of predictable. His name is Arthur. There's a kind of connection there.
But he's certainly not ready.
Yes, he is.
He's
certainly not ready.
But this is where all of the knights' alliances are challenged, because some of the knights are like, I am not going to bow down to some squire boy and pronounce him king of England or king of the lands. And then you got some knights like, no, we were told that the true king would be the one to pull the sword from the stone, so we'll fight for the boy. And Arthur is like, I'm just going to run into the woods after Merlin.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what to do.
Merlin! Why have you done this to me?
Because you were born to be king.
What does it mean to be king?
You will be the land, and the land will be you. If you fail, the land will perish. As you thrive, the land will blossom.
But why?
Because you are king.
No!
It is another one of its epic charms that we do see Arthur from a baby through adolescence to a young man to old age.
Yeah.
And that narrative, that time within the narrative really, really works, I think. It doesn't jar in any way.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure about Nigel Terry's performance when I first saw him as Arthur. Like I said, it was the accent and the way he delivered himself as this squire boy. It was kind of like he hadn't been taught enough. And so he was kind of just surviving by his wits and being told what to do. But later on in the movie, when he starts to grow this big beard and he starts to take on the responsibilities of being king, and all the stuff that will follow with that, I was really getting behind him then. Like, you know what? This guy is playing the same role throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Not the baby, obviously. He wasn't a baby. But he plays this young Arthur all the way up to old Arthur, a bit of makeup on, a bit of grey hair. But he still carried himself.
Yeah.
By the end of the film, he is king. But at this moment, there was the scene in the forest where he goes with Merlin off to the forest. And Merlin's asleep, and he's got that weird lizard eye thing keeping himself awake. And Arthur's looking around, and he sees the owl, and he hears the wolf, and then he sees an anaconda in the woods of England, which was a bit weird, and he sees a lizard as well. So I was just like, okay, is he in the Amazon, or is he in the woods of England?
But he's with Merlin, who is is a creature of magic.
Yeah.
And as we've said, this is the age of magic sort of fading out of our world. And so it is kind of the mystical, it's a mythic story. So adding all these extra animals, it just adds to the credence, the believability of Merlin.
Yeah.
But I also think as well, that you do have those biblical references attached to it. And at the point where Arthur withdrew the sword and is now on this pilgrimage to become the greatest king that, England's ever known, and it's going to fall through temptation, and the snake and the lizards, and you've got your owl for wisdom, symbolic of this fall from grace that was going to happen.
Yeah, but he just comes across so Frank Spencer-esque.
I know.
When he's there.
But this is why you don't hate Guinevere later for getting it on.
No, don't. We're not getting to Guinevere yet. We're not getting to Guinevere yet. We're still in the woods with Merlin.
I will always be with Guinevere in those woods.
I do love the sequence where Merlin grabs Arthur's neck, and he's just like, "You see all the magic around?" And Arthur's like, "Yes. Tell me about it."
What are you afraid of?
I don't know.
Shall I tell you what's out there?
Yes, please.
The dragon. A beast of such power that if you were to see it whole and all complete in a single glance, it would burn you to cinders.
And I was just like, okay, this is the part where he starts to going to gain knowledge. And Arthur's just like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I like the way that Merlin kind of coaxed him. You know, this is where, like I said, you compare Merlin going up against people like Helen Mirren and Gabriel Byrne, you know, he's a stage actor hamming it up. When he goes up against like Nigel Terry, he's the more experienced actor on set. And he says to him like, well, I don't know, you're king, what do you think you should do? And then Arthur starts thinking it through. Well, we should organise all the guys and we should go and help Patrick Stewart because he's under siege at his castle. There you go. That wasn't too hard, was it? I was just like, nice. I see what you did there, Merlin. You just kind of
But do you
pushed
think
him
as
along.
well, because we did see him at this very innocent age, and I think he retains that innocence, and for the legend and for the story and for the characters to work, you have to have this huge contrast, and it's kind of honour, truth, goodness versus deceit, temptation, isn't it? And he maintains this innocence, I think.
Even he maintains it even though his future wife is a complete slut.
No, she isn't.
Now, what do you want us to do?
Waited here for you. Was that right? Any man who would be a knight and follow a king. Follow me!
Where to? Where are we going?
The undergrounds! His castle is under siege!
The set pieces are amazing. I mean, we already said it at the beginning with the Duke of Cornwall's castle and the fog and the horse riding across. I love the siege with Patrick Stewart's castle. These guys do seem to attack the most silliest parts in the movie. I mean, you had that sequence with Uther Pendragon trying to get into Duke of Cornwall's castle, and you've got Duke of Cornwall looking down, saying, "You'll never get through here," and Uther Pendragon's like, "We're going to get in there," and they're attacking this tiny little gate in the side of a wall. And then you flick to Patrick Stewart's siege, and they're all trying to climb up this fucking massive, great big wall next to a river. And I'm just like, guys, okay, this plan doesn't seem to work because there seems to be thousands of knights running in and Patrick Stewart and probably 5 other people defending. You know, you watch Arthur run up. He climbs up that, what do they call it?
Siege tower.
The siege tower. Nobody stops him.
Well, he slays anyone who tries to.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't wait to hear how you would have tackled this.
I would have probably stood outside and went, look, I've got the sword of power. Anybody who tries to fight me is probably going to get nailed.
But from Guinevere's perspective, you know, her home is under siege, and she sees this farm boy would-be king rushing to her rescue, and he's not even wearing knight's armour. And he's cutting his way through to her. And so you can see why she's instantly... you know, falling for him.
Yes, I love that. I thank you for bringing that up. I love the fact that Guinevere stood there, seeing him do all these brilliant things. I mean, that leap from the wall was amazing. How the fuck did he survive that? I've never known. But it was a really good sequence. But she's there and she's besotted by him. You know, this is the first young lad to come across with no armor and take on all these guys carrying the sword of power, and she falls for him, which makes what happens in the future even worse.
About 12, in fairness.
She doesn't look 12.
Well, no, but this was written. This was, you know, it's based on, as you know, Morte d'Arthur. It's based on the Sword and the Stone.
Yeah.
It's based on Tristan and Isolde.
Yeah.
What, you know, the remerging of these narratives to create a more comprehensive one. But Morte d'Arthur was written in 1485.
Yeah.
You know, she would have been probably about 12.
Yeah.
Right.
She probably had never led such a sheltered life. I'm just prepping myself for this battle we're going to have later.
She may have led a sheltered life. Her father, Patrick Stewart, may have protected her, you know, bringing all of his knights to the castle and then riding off to try and pull the sword from stone. That's all fine. It's just, we start to follow Arthur, you know, he's managed to, you know, defeat Eurus and hands Eurus the sword because Eurus won't follow somebody who's still a squire. And so Arthur has Eurus knight him, which I thought was a brilliant sequence.
It is a really great sequence. I love the part where Merlin just steps forward and even he couldn't foresee this event happening.
I never saw this.
Rise,
King Arthur. I am your humble knight, and I swear allegiance to the courage in your veins.
And I also love the fact that the two of them in the river are shaking, and it's like, oh, they're just, you know, in rapture of the emotion of what's going on, and the truth is that they're both freezing their asses off in that cold ice lake.
See, that was it. I'm sat there and I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, okay, so that lake, that little river, is probably full of dirty water. There's gallons of blood in it as well, and these guys are sat in armor, kneeling in it. You're all gonna get cholera. You're all gonna start the plague. So we follow Arthur and Merlin back to Uther's castle, I think it was. They start having a little bit of a party, a bit of a shindig, you know, getting together. And Arthur is falling for Guinevere. He is falling in love with her. I love this conversation between Merlin and Arthur about girls.
Well, for Merlin, he'd already just seen this happen with Uther.
Yeah.
And now as soon as Arthur's become king, he's like, right, now I want a wife. And Merlin's just like, oh, this again? What is wrong with you men?
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, Guinevere. And a beloved friend who will betray you. Guinevere. You're not listening. Your heart is not. Love is deaf as well as blind. That's it.
That shows me obviously the lineage of Pendragon. You know, him being his father, there is lust within Arthur.
I see it as an animal thing. I see
Yeah.
it as a natural, you know, you can't just say that it's two men that and from lineage and that no other men or women suffer from lust.
He's just been handed the sword of power. He's uniting the lands, and all he wants to do is fuck.
He's probably about 14 as well.
But he doesn't look
His
14.
hormones will be
He's
raging.
about 20.
He needs
Guinevere
to-
looks
no.
about 20. You know, I know the Middle Ages
He's
was a
probably
difficult
never
time.
met a lady before.
Okay.
He was a squire.
You know, it was all, there was no internet back then. It was either you're either battling or fucking. That was it. You are battling or fucking. You know, you're either on a quest or on a woman. That was it. You know? But like I said, the funny sequence is Merlin sat there, you know, like what Gary said, looking at Arthur thinking, really, just wait. Just when Arthur's like, oh no, Merlin, I can't wait now. I've got to get in there, Merlin. I've got to get me some, yes.
A king must marry after all.
So it seems.
We then cut to Lancelot on the bridge. Brilliant set piece, you know, the Silver Knight just stood there on the bridge. And this was the really comedy moment for Merlin, I thought, where Arthur comes up to him and he's just like, Merlin, what about this man on the bridge? Merlin, are you going to help me? And Merlin's just like, I'm trying to get this fish and I've fallen in the river. And I'm like, what the fuck, Merlin?
Real slapstick.
What are you, drunk
Yeah.
or something?
But that's it. Merlin does have some Disney moments in the film which
Yeah.
are just really childish and really humorous. But those moments of levity are kind of needed in this film.
Yeah, because it is dark and it is brutal. The battle sequences are bloody and gory. And you see all of Arthur's knights coming away from the bridge saying, oh, he's really, really good. He's got some skills behind him. And Arthur's like, oh, fuck it, I'll go down and I'll have him. And so they go down, and like I said, that brilliant shot of Arthur in his black armour, Lancelot in his silver armour, on either side of the bridge, and Lancelot's just like, yes, I'm waiting for the king to come along so I can offer him my sword. You know, I'm the greatest swordsman in the land. And I'm like, yeah, you're a bit cocky.
No.
Got a little bit of cockiness behind you,
It's
Lancelot.
like Ronaldo. He's got the numbers to back him up.
Yeah, but you know, they have the fight sequence, which was a brilliant fight sequence. But for me, I'm just like, it's like what Arthur says, because he uses the power of Excalibur to strike Lancelot and damages his armour.
I disagree, sorry. It's another moment of growing for Arthur. The first one is when he gives his sword in trust to be knighted.
Yes, yeah.
The second one is when he's been taken off his horse and he says, to the death. And it's when he has these moments of absolute clarity of decision that make it believable that people would follow him and that he could unite a kingdom.
Yes.
So it's another growing.
But it's his temper
It's not
from
just
his
the
father.
sword.
That's what got him in trouble. His temper from his father forcing himself to fight Lancelot to the death. And they fight, and Lancelot is whooping his ass all the way through the fight up until Arthur goes, I'm going to use the power of my magic sword. He should have just used it at the beginning.
Excalibur, I call on your power.
But he uses the power of Excalibur, he cracks Lancelot's armour and breaks the sword. And this moment, I think, is actually what you're meaning, is where
when he learns.
Yeah, where he learns. He's just like, who's going to follow me when I can't even control my emotions?
Well, that's
I've
it.
just broken the sword.
He fesses up immediately, and you can see Merlin is just heartbroken. He's like, what could not be broken is broken.
What the fuck, dude?
Classic Shakespearean line as well.
But Arthur immediately repents for it. He's like, he owns up to what he's just done.
I've lost, for all time, the ancient sword of my fathers, whose power was meant to unite all men, not to serve the vanity of a single man. I am nothing.
And the Lady in the Lake's like, yeah, you know what, you are the rightful king. You didn't just go, oh, well, he had it coming.
Yeah.
And goes, there you go, have the sword back.
But I think it was a learning that the sword is a symbol as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just like the cross is to Christianity, and, you know, it was a rallying point, but it's who wields it, and that's the lesson that he learned.
Yeah.
And what was in your heart when you wielded it. It's classic fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Arthur makes Lancelot his new champion, and Lancelot's all happy for the job because obviously he's been waiting for the king to...
He's been waiting for anyone to beat him in combat.
Yeah. And so they go around and they unite the lands, and there's that great little moment up on the hillside where everybody's slapping each other on the back. How many men did you kill? I killed hundreds. How many villages did you burn? Loads. And they're just all happy about it. And Arthur's just like, hey guys, you know what? While we're all here, I'm going to make a round table for us. Massive, huge gaming table for us to get together on a Saturday night to start playing. And Merlin has his little speech there. He manages to get all the knights together and says to them to hold in their emotions, you know, not to act like the people who have acted before, you know, and that's what's actually destroyed the land before, is egos and emotions and all that kind of stuff getting crazy. But this is where the argument's probably going to start between us, because Lancelot as Arthur's champion is looked upon by a lot of the ladies as a smooth pimp.
No, he's not. He's
And
an
the
absolute
Queen,
dish. He's not a pimp.
the Queen Guinevere comes along and says to him, well, I think you should settle down, Lancelot. I think you should get yourself a partner because, you know, you need to be happy. I want to see you happy. And Lancelot turns to her and goes, I love you because you're my queen. I love you because you're my best friend's wife. And because of that, I cannot love anybody else. And Guinevere's like, oh my God. Oh my God.
I did. Oh my
Oh my God.
No.
Oh my God. And I'm like, this is all going to end terribly. I've seen episodes of Friends that have been less predictable than this. Oh, come on. Come on.
You're teasing me.
I will love you always. I will love you as my queen and as the wife of my best friend. And while you live, I will love no other.
Now, she sees Lancelot, and like you said, yes, he's a pretty hot dish. Not going to argue that. He spends the rest of his time away from Camelot. Camelot?
Camelot. It's only a model. Shh.
He spends the rest of his time away from Camelot because of his feelings towards Queen Guinevere, yes?
Well, it's the best thing he can do to safeguard his temptation.
Because he loves his king, he loves his queen, he loves his best friend. He doesn't want to ruin any of that. Okay? We're all agreeing on that? And Guinevere, she feels something towards him. she might not love Arthur as much. She feels something towards Lancelot. Now, okay, we are talking about the Middle Ages. There was no Facebook. You know, they couldn't just post private message each other and start discussing their feelings and all that kind of stuff. But he spends all of his time away from Camelot until the knights have all got together around the table and Liam Neeson starts some shit. He's like, what the fuck?
And now to be driven from us by a woman's desire!
In the idleness that comes with peace, I see that gossip has bred its own evil.
Well, that's because he's got a little girl whispering in his ear, and that would be Morgana, who's spreading these rumours and these lies to the knights.
What lies? Guinevere fancies Lancelot. It's not the fact that they're not doing anything. I get that they're not doing anything.
Allowed in any shape. You know, this is one. This is.
Does she lust after him? Does she lust after him?
But it might not just be lust. You don't know.
Does she lust after?
Even if she does, she has also not done anything to pursue it.
Because she can. He's fucked off to the woods. She'd actually have to leave the castle on a horse and ride after him. But she knows she can't because that would have raised suspicion from the king. So she doesn't. She stays as the loving wife, which is fine. But when Liam Neeson starts his shit and she turns to Arthur and she's like, come on, are you not going to defend me? I haven't done anything. We know something's going to happen. We've read the legends.
But in fairness as well, it's also tied up with this this awful ennui that's settled on the court as well. Everything's going well. You know, there's no wars. The realm is happy. And so are the knights, and so is the court. Well, they want quests. They are drinking. They are getting
they
out
need
of
battle.
shape. They are, you know. So to me, it also represents that cycle of life, I suppose, where humans do travel around it from discontent to content.
Yeah, I mean, Arthur says that, doesn't he? He says, where is evil?
Perhaps never felt what love was before, and didn't even know that these overwhelming feelings could totally sweep both of them up to the point of the exclusion of all else, and that is love. It's it's been described as an illness. Why it's been described, you know.
If she loved Lancelot,
music,
why did she?
It's art, it's literature,
If she loved Lancelot, and she felt love towards Lancelot, and she felt the love that he gave, why doesn't she just admit it? Why does she make Gawain out to be such a liar?
Because she hadn't done anything, and he was saying that they were having sexual relations, and they weren't.
No. I got from him that he had suspicions that she loved after Lancelot. They hadn't done anything, that will I admit. But he knew or felt or had been told by Morgana, because Morgana had seen it herself, that Guinevere lusted after Lancelot, and that's why Lancelot stayed away. Because he couldn't. She could have turned to the king and said, you know what? He is right. I've got to admit, Lancelot is pretty fucking hot. I know it wouldn't have worked towards legend.
So she should have just invited him into the bedroom for a three-way.
She should have, It would have got a bit more exciting. But instead, they have the fight. You have Gawain and Lancelot. And Lancelot, we see Lancelot out in the woods praying to the Lord God to protect him, because he is fighting his own feelings. He lusts after Guinevere himself, but he has the right idea of staying away, because he is the king's champion.
Because he should be round the table with the knights, with his king. It was affecting both of them. So
yes, because he knows that if he was there, something would happen between them. He knew that if he was at Camelot, they would find a nice little quiet corner. They would have got together.
He couldn't have stayed
No, they couldn't. They couldn't, so because after the battle sequence, after Lancelot has defeated Gawain, and Gawain has said, the queen is innocent, everybody! She is innocent, she's not doing anything. Lancelot sits at the round table, and with the niggling injury that he had after fighting himself, which was a bit awkward. I mean, naked Lancelot, you must have loved that sequence.
Well, not really, because he had a massive big sword sticking out of his side.
Yeah, that
It
looked
Fight
painful.
Club,
That
wasn't it?
bit, that bit was
Fight
painful.
Club, yeah.
But Lancelot says, "I cannot stay here because sitting there so close to Guinevere, all he wants to do is touch her, kiss her. You know, he lusts after her and she lusts after him, and he says, nope, I'm going back off to the woods. I'm better off out there." What does Guinevere do?
Yeah, she chases after him.
Yeah, she chases after him, and as soon as they're alone in the woods, everything that Gawain said has come about.
You don't know what she might have been, not chasing after him, but wanting to have some kind of a resolution to say thank you so much for what you are doing.
Yeah.
What a horrendous experience we've both been through. This is tough. But
Let's
we
have
can
sex.
Do this. No.
Let's have sex. After everything we've gone through, all the lies that people have been saying to us, let's just have sex.
It could have been killed as well. She was probably just in total turmoil, Iain.
Yes, she was probably totally in turmoil.
But you can't.
Lancelot was totally in her turmoil. She was right up into her ears in turmoil to the point where Arthur.
Right, I'm just going to stop you both now and change the subject a little bit and get back to Merlin, who at this point has come up to Arthur and said, "You know what? My time here is pretty much done.
Yeah.
The time of men and kings is upon us, so this will be the last time you ever see me."
What must I do now? Kill them?
I can tell you nothing more. My days are ended. The gods of once are gone, forever. It's a time for men. It's your time.
I need you now, more than ever.
No. This is the moment that you must face at last, to be king alone.
And it is, that moment, it's a tense moment when Arthur's there and he pulls Excalibur free and you see them just laying there in the wood. And you don't know really what's going to happen until he thrusts that sword deep into the earth. And metaphorically also impaling Merlin at the same time.
Yeah.
Which just goes to show the connection between the king, the sword, and the land. And this is when Morgana uses this opportunity to absorb Merlin's power and encase him into oblivion.
Yes.
This is where the film really changes its pace once more, and all of the glittering lights and the lush forests all give way to, what you would really imagine the Dark Ages to look like.
Who's that then? I don't know. Must be a king. Why? He hasn't got shit all over him.
We've also been following Sir Percival up to this point. He was he was a robber who tried to attack Lancelot while he was, out in the woods. And Lancelot's brought him back to Camelot. He went to defend the Queen's honour during the fight while Lancelot was a bit late. And he's actually been knighted. And like you said, Morgana has now absorbed Merlin's power and changes herself to look like Guinevere and goes and has sex with her half-brother. I mean, come on, the Dark Ages. You had nothing else to do apart from killing and fucking?
Love me. Love me.
Guinevere.
Forget and love me. I have conceived a son, my king. My brother.
And she becomes pregnant with Mordred. And Arthur now is obviously completely heartbroken because the woman that he loved was shagging his best friend off in the woods. And his sister has obviously raped him, I suppose. And she's given birth to her son now. And so he sets the knights the quest. The land is now dark. Evil is rising. You all need to go out and find the Holy Grail. But this part I really love because Sir Percival, he's one of the only few knights. He's like one of 3 that survived. I mean, there's like 20 to start off with, and he's one of 3 that actually survives towards the end. But his sequences are very Dark Soul-like. I mean, there's this beautiful sequence where he rides up to the top of this mountain and he sees a knight just kneeling, praying. And it's not until he gets closer that he realizes that the person inside the knight's armor is dead. And I was just like, Ashen 1, There must be a bonfire around here somewhere, Percival. You can rest and fill up your Estus flask. That'd be brilliant. But it's when he comes across Mordred in the woods. And Mordred is wearing that fucking awesome armor.
It's
he
the
looked
laugh.
intimidating, and the
It's
laugh
the
as well. And the goriness of when he comes across the tree, and you've got that crow just pecking at the eyes and pulling the flesh out, and Mordred's just like, yeah, all these guys were looking for the Holy Grail as well, but
they failed.
They failed.
And come with me, and I'll show you where it is.
Yeah,
You'd question it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but at that point, I mean, Percival he's probably starving. He's broken. He's disorientated, and he has that brilliant sequence because he comes across Morgana Le Fay, and I forgot to bring this in, but Morgana Le Fay is given to us by the gorgeous Helen Mirren in this. I mean, she was a lot better character than Guinevere.
I agree.
Because you knew from the start that she was just evil. She has her father's eyes. And she faces Percival with that choice. Join me and you can have whatever you want, or die. And he's just like, no.
Yeah, still loyal to Arthur and the knights and everything that he believes in, and doesn't want to give up this quest.
And it was really good because, like I said, Arthur had his father's temper. Lancelot, for as good as he was, had given in to his lust. Percival was the one true knight, and it would be reflected by that because obviously he would be the one to retrieve the Grail. But that sequence where all the knights come up with all the Grails into his face, and then he gets accosted by all the different armor suits come and go. That was pretty creepy. I did really, really enjoy that.
I love the image of him hanging at the tree. Just all of the corpses and the crows.
Yes.
The music and the imagery in this film is outstanding. And when he's hanging there and choking for his life, that's when he enters sort of the dreamscape.
Yeah.
And the drawbridge comes down and you hear sort of a godly Arthur voice asking him about the Grail.
Yeah.
But he freaks out and he runs for it. And just by happenstance, he's also cut down from the tree by one of the spurs on one of the knights. And he just realizes that he's failed.
Yeah.
And doesn't know what to do with himself. But you also then see Mordred and his knights attacking Eurus, who was the one who knighted Arthur right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And he's fighting him, and eventually he's impaled with a javelin in the back.
Yes.
And you're just like, Percival, we also saw Gawain, the corpse of Gawain, go riding past earlier. I'm like, that's not Liam Neeson. But it's supposed to have been him anyway.
Yeah.
And you do realise that he is probably the last knight of the Round Table still searching for the Grail.
Well, he comes across Lancelot, doesn't he?
Finds Lancelot.
Yeah.
Lancelot's broken. His mind is gone. He's just wandering the land as this monk trying to redeem himself. And they attack Percival, and he falls into the river. And like I said, following the suits of armor, the what the actors wear, I really felt for him when he was in that water. That he had
sinking to the bottom.
He had to drop it all.
Yep.
Because he would sink to the bottom. And then there was kind of the rebirth sequence where
he
comes out and he's been cleansed.
Yeah.
He comes across the castle, and then he's given the Grail, and he's asked the question, who owns the Grail? Who do you follow? I follow you, my lord. You're King Arthur.
What is the secret of the Grail? Who does it serve?
You, my lord.
Have you found the secret that I have lost?
Yes. You and the land are one.
And he takes the Grail back to Arthur, gives him the drink out of it, and then Arthur's just completely restored. He's just like, come on, lads, time for a fight. Now, you say the music, though. I love the kind of instrumental medieval type music that they had playing, but they did overplay the Old Spice theme. That classical music. They did. They did.
It was used just at the right amount of. It was used just the right amount, and it was always there to show that things were going well or things were right. You know, as soon as the land starts healing
It was-
and the knights ride forth once more.
Now that bit, yeah, okay. It was all bombastic. The knights are riding out. The land is all changing. Arthur's off to battle. Yes, got it. Music sounded really, really good. But when he attacks Mordred's camp in the fog, they messed up the music there, I felt, because they had Mordred stood there talking to one of his guards, and the music's just lightly in the background. Then it cuts to Arthur, and the music's like bombastic, and then it cuts back to Mordred, and he's just like, "Well, where are they coming from?" But you could, if you keep your ear out, you can hear which direction they're coming from, because that knight there's got a massive boom box.
Where are they? Listen!
They won't know how few we are in the fog.
We'll use the old ways.
Turn about! Look to the rear! You don't move!
They go to attack Mordred, and Merlin has returned at this point. Arthur has called upon him. Merlin has obviously heard him while being encased in oblivion, and he's a ghost. Or is he still just trapped in oblivion? But it's
No,
like
Arthur's love for him brought him back.
yes, but he's insubstantial. He can pass through objects and stuff like that. And he gets to Mordred's camp and he stealths in. I like that bit. You know, nobody could see him. He gets past all the guards, and he comes across Helen Mirren in bed, and he starts kind of a mystical battle with her, but it's in her dream, and she doesn't realize this. And he starts to pull the magic out of her, and yeah, the smoke.
Anal, nathrach, urthvas bethad, doch hel dienve.
That's better than I ever was.
Doch hel dienve. Anal, nathrach, urthvas bethad.
Careful.
That was a lot of smoke.
It was an amazing effect when you saw it on VHS.
Yeah.
But you know, when you see it today on a Blu-ray, you can sort of see that the smoke pipe that she's got there is sort of misaligned, and even when her mouth's closed,
Yeah.
it's just vaping
billowing.
out everywhere.
Billowing. But it builds up, because obviously, you know, there's loads of smoke coming out, and it lays the fog.
Which Arthur's knights would use to ambush Mordred's forces.
It. Mordred comes across his mother and doesn't recognise her, or he does recognise her, but he hates the fact that she looks so old now, and kills her. I was just like, all right, Mordred,
pretty brutal. Yeah.
You've got some issues, mate. I think you need to sort it out. You know, maybe speak to your father. He might be able to help you out. And then it's just the final battle sequence.
Yeah,
you know, it's
over pretty quickly. You could. You know, but it's again, you get to see arms being flayed off and battle axes wedged into the chests of breastplates and armour.
Yes.
And you watch all the knights go down one by one until
there's power behind it as well, which I liked. It didn't look, obviously it would have been choreographed, but it didn't.
Yes. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it didn't look too choreographed. It looked like, right, guys, we need to hit each other, but not too hard.
Strength.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
and of course, Lancelot turns up just to save the knights.
Yes.
One more time, but. He doesn't get hit at all, but his old injuries is just enough to kill him at this point.
Yeah. And
it eventually just leaves Arthur, Percival, and Mordred left standing on the battlefield. And Mordred and Arthur are like, let's embrace.
But there's forgiveness as well, sorry, you've forgotten. There's forgiveness.
Between Arthur and
Lancelot.
Yes.
And I think that's really important as one of the...
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he had that sequence as well with Guinevere, because she's been holding on to Excalibur this whole time. And like I said, that takes me back to the way that they were, because they both knew what they did was wrong, and that's why they seeked forgiveness from Arthur.
They knew it was wrong before they did it, but I think that they were able to look with hindsight to say, look what we have been through.
Yes.
Look what an insignificant thing in terms of our life has created.
Yeah.
We need forgiveness.
My salvation is to die a knight of the Round Table.
You are that, and much more. You are its greatest knight. You are what is best in men.
Guinevere. queen again.
She is, Lancelot.
And then you get that brilliant shot in the final sequence with Mordred and Arthur. You've got the audience of dead knights on the floor. You've got the red sun in the background. You've got Mordred with the big spear, Arthur with the sword of power, and he just allows himself to get impaled. He allows himself to get impaled, but uses the spear to pull himself forward to Mordred, and then strikes Mordred down. Now, that was epic. I don't know why the film kind of had to ruin it with this last sequence.
I love this last sequence.
Oh, come on. Arthur tells Percival to throw the sword in the lake.
Yeah.
So we follow Percival to the lake.
Yeah.
He changes his mind.
Well,
your king has just given you an order. Why question it?
But Percival understands that, the sword and king and the land are one. And he doesn't want to separate the king from his sword.
But he's been given an order by his king. His king is dying. The land has been restored. But
it takes Arthur a second explanation to him as to why he should go and do it, for him to go and do it. And I understand Percival's plight. He's just like, why am I doing this?
He rides all the way back, and Arthur's just like, what did I tell you? Get rid of that fucking sword, please. Just throw it back in the lake. That's where, because Arthur understands that that's where it belongs.
Yeah.
He was gifted it by the lake. It needs to be returned to the lake, And so Percival has to go back for the second time and cast it into the lake. And you gotta love that little hand shot come out, like,
totally. Yeah.
Grabbing the sword, taking it back in. And we watch Arthur on the boat off to the Grey Havens, Well, he's going off to Avalon, the magical land. Percival watches him go off. And now we just have to wait for a new king to rise to retrieve the Sword of Power from the lake. How many years have we been waiting now?
Yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Right, you're living in the right area, Iain.
Yeah, it's too much pressure. I've been king once before. I don't need to be it again.
I have got so many memorable and favourite scenes in this film. As you said, Percival's entire story arc, from the moment he turns up, catching the rabbit and skinning it and feeding it to Lancelot, to running the 20 days back to Camelot, to defending Guinevere's honour, becoming a knight on his quest for the Holy Grail, and being there with Arthur in his final moments. I just love Percival's story. Merlin and Arthur, their scenes together are always great. I love the dialogue and the banter back and forth. But I love the sequence when Arthur asks Merlin where evil is.
Yes.
And Merlin explains to him that the best thing that you can do is have truth and always tell the truth, because every time you lie, you kill a part of the land.
Yeah.
And I love Arthur and Merlin's goodbye together, and also the dream in which Arthur is walking around. It looks like a small Stonehenge.
Yeah.
And Merlin appears to him again, and it's just like his friend that he's not seen in all these years has come back just to tell him that it's going to be okay, and he also tells him that he's also a nightmare to others. Just the script, the delivery, the music, the cinematography, all those moments just encapsulated it. Fantastic.
Where are you, Merlin? If only you could see me wield Excalibur once more.
You brought me back. Your love brought me back. Back to where you are now. In the land of dreams.
Are you just a dream, Merlin?
A dream to some.
A nightmare to others!
My last favourite scene is when Arthur totally redeems himself and Guinevere and Lancelot when he comes back to Guinevere, who has become a nun, and he explains to her that he knows the mistakes he's made, and he hopes that the people that come after him won't have to suffer the mistakes he's made. And you're like, that is a real leader who has got real wisdom and And that's why the legend of Arthur has stayed with so many people for so long, that you almost believe and wish to believe that this myth was real, that someone like this could have existed.
I was not born to live a man's life, but to be the stuff of future memory. The fellowship was a brief beginning, a fair time that cannot be forgotten. And because it will not be forgotten, that fair time may come again.
And and Guinevere, who never bore him a child, presents Excalibur to him in a sheath wrapping almost like she would a child.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful, beautiful moment in the film. Love it.
What stayed with me from the very first viewing in the mid-80s was Igraine's dance. It was Igraine's dance, Arthur's conception. I just think that it was done with depth, with the acting was absolutely superb, and I think that it set the scene wonderfully for the rest of the story.
My favourite scenes, fantasy medieval movies, you just got to go with it. I mean, the whole sequence with Merlin at the beginning, claiming the child, after everything he did. It's just, like I said, it really set the mood of, we're in this time. This is what's going to happen. There is no changing it. Arthur is going to go off, and the mother screaming, Pendragon chasing after him and getting attacked in the woods. You're just like, oh fuck, we're getting to the meat of the story now. I love the sequence in the woods between Merlin and Arthur. Arthur's voice just really silly, just sounds so off. But at the same time, Merlin just holds the sequence together, just being this over-the-top actor of, I know all this stuff, and you're gonna learn from me, and you're gonna be the greatest king. You're like, yeah, let's bring it. Arthur and Merlin talking about girls. Merlin knows some shit, and Arthur should listen to him, and just kept it in his pants for a little while longer. Merlin falling in the river. There's a lot of, I'm noticing a pattern here. It's mostly Merlin sequences. It's like when he meets up with Percival and he bangs his head on that bucket. That was pretty good. I like the sequence where Merlin and Morgana are in the Tomb of the Dragons, I suppose it is, and their face off.
Look into the eyes of the dragon and despair. I destroy you. I consign you to oblivion.
I love the fight sequences. Lancelot versus Arthur was really, really well done. Liam Neeson starting some shit around the table. He's got some anger issues. And then the fight that he has with Lancelot, that was brilliantly done as well. And then like what Gary said, Percival going off on his quest. And my final favourite shot of the movie is the final sequence between Mordred and Arthur. The shot where they're stood face to face together, and then the impaling of the weapons, and then them falling down dying.
Yeah. I highly recommend Excalibur to everyone. This for me is the pinnacle of the fantasy genre. I put it right up there next to Conan the Barbarian. There's very few films in this genre which have the adult themes that we want in our fantasy genre. It almost makes the genre legitimate. It's not your Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And the music in this film, Richard Wagner's soundtrack is just, just epic.
Uther. Merlin? Uther. Merlin! I am the strongest! I am the one!
The way this film looks, from the lighting, from the interiors of Camelot to the forests outside where they actually used green backlights just to give the forest, to make it look more magical. It's just brilliant. All the little tricks that they used, of course, to make a Lord of the Rings movie that transferred into this just adds to the magical quality of this film, which just makes this mythic tale feel more real and more tangible almost. All of the Arthurian tales that have come after this have just been piss poor interpretations of the material, in my opinion. Whether it was King Arthur, whether it was Merlin, sorry Sam Neill, but you are not Merlin, as much as I love your work, all the way up into the modern Guy Ritchie King Arthur tale, which is coming out this year, they're all pale imitations. Either they're too contemporary in their filmmaking, or it lacks the substance in the script, or it just doesn't have that unique soundtrack, which just ties this film together. This film is fucking epic. And I understand that if you've never seen this film, you might have trouble getting through it, because the film time jumps, and it's almost like these vignette stories. It's the complete saga of King Arthur, and you're doing yourself a great injustice if you do not watch this film.
I recommend Excalibur, but not as big as Gary did.
I'm surprised you're recommending it at all, Iain.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right. It's okay. It's got some good moments in it. The acting is pretty good. The set pieces are pretty good. The battle sequences are pretty good. Everything was, like I said, just pretty good. But I couldn't shake the fact that while I'm watching the film, you know, I kept thinking about the Disney Sword in the Stone, and I wanted to see more of the magic, more proper magic from Merlin. I mean, he does some, and he does talk about the dragon and things like that, but I know 1980s, they would have had difficulty to do it, but the film just kind of, it jumped around between the relationships too much for me. You know, I'd rather have watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
We're knights of the round table, we dance where we're able. We do routines, we call us scenes, the footwork impeccable. We dine well here in Camelot, we eat ham and jam and spam a lot.
If you don't know the legend of King Arthur when you go into this, you might not stay all the way through. If you're a King Arthur fan and you're into magic and legendary stories, then yeah, you'll probably enjoy this more than that Keira Knightley one.
No, I would recommend it as well as a Sunday afternoon movie. It's not often that I will watch a film more than once, but I've seen it repeatedly as a youngster. We watched it the night before my sister got married, and it's a little test as to whether she was doing the right thing. And I think that the fact that it is driven by the relationships, it is driven by the life philosophies, is what gives it that adult theme. And to me, it almost did for fantasy film what Blade Runner did for science fiction. I think that it has the depth. I think that the characters have the dimension for it to stand the test of time, with the exception of some of those issues that you would expect from an early 80s movie.
Yeah.
Excalibur cannot be lost. Other men.
Do as I command. One day, a king will come, and the sword will rise again.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Merlin? A dream to some.
A nightmare to others!